everyone. Just wanted to make sure that you can hear me. I'm the CEO. I'm Paweł Tomczuk, CEO and founder of TechTree. And together with me, it's Francesco, who's the co-founder of Silicon Roundabout, one of the biggest developer communities in Europe. Hey, Francesco.
Hi, Pavel. Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Yeah, so this is another one, first in 2021, of our Show the Code events. And, the idea we have is to bring some of the most exciting tech businesses in the world and be able to listen what they're building straight from the horse's mouth. So not the CEOs who always share, flashy, exciting stories, but actually people who build the tech behind them. So, today's edition is in partnership with Northzone, one of the most successful European VCs, backer of multiple unicorns, and investing from seed to Series B. And we could easily call it the unicorn edition. So, we have 3 businesses that are already achieved this status with the latest edition of Personio, who announced their round earlier this year, and one Infogrid, who's on their way to do that. So very exciting lineup. And as usual, it's all about interaction. So we're going to listen to 4 talks, and if you can ask questions, if you can on chat, we will do our best to respond to them. You will also be able to respond and speak directly with speakers. You can chat to them privately. And that's it for me. And Francesco, you might want to say a little bit about Silicon Roundabout.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pavel. And hi again, everyone. So for those of you who are joining this session after attending last year's sessions, then welcome back. And for all of you, and we're talking with Pavel before, this is the most attended session so far. So we've been growing edition after edition, which is great. So welcome to all of you if it's the first time. And I still remember when Pavel and I were talking about doing this series last year when it was just an idea. And it was something that immediately struck me because I'm an engineer. I've been building code. I love tech actually from the inside out. And I've built Silicon Roundabout as a community to allow coders like ourselves to meet entrepreneurs, to meet angel investors, to really build the tech. And the Silicon Roundabout community has, of course, focused on startups. So in terms of main events historically. So it was great to bring it back to also have a session dedicated to us engineers and to really talk tech. So yes, about startups, but not necessarily about the financials, but more about the actual new stuff that we are building. So really excited to have you all. Really hope you enjoy, and please give us feedback. Keep in touch with us and be part of the TechTree and Silicon Roundabout communities, because there will be more of this to come. And thanks to your feedback, we can keep improving. Silicon Roundabout, like I said, is a community that came out of a meetup, now being going on for a decade, all about startups, all about entrepreneurs and engineers and the investors in them coming together. And myself, I've left 3 years, just under 3 years ago, actually, professional coding to focus entirely on the Silicon Roundabout community. And I'm now proud to say that in this year, 2021, we are launching our VC fund. We've actually signed the term sheet for our first investment after I've done some angel investing over the last few months, and proud of actually being a backer of TechTree here. Amazing companies, guys, and really happy to partner up. And of course, there will be more and more to come. On the other side, we're also launching an academy to upskill people that want to join the tech sector, not necessarily coders and engineers, but also marketing, sales. And for that platform, we're actually hiring an engineer ourselves. So I didn't want to put ourselves in there as startup, because this is all about the startups. But if you guys are curious, do reach out about that. There is only one role so far. Feel free to reach out on that one. And other than that, I also do one thing with this series, which is effectively going around to our partners, in this case, Northzone, and speak to one of the investors to talk about tech. In this case, before this event, I had the pleasure to have a chat with Henrik, investment manager at Northzone. And the chat revolved around, and it always revolves around, really, every time I interview one of the partner VCs, what is their outlook on code, on the tech side of things? Because I remember when I was coding, again, in startups teams, really you're building for users, but ultimately a VC, an investor, is kind of a user you need to keep into account, because the CEO, we're going to empower them to go pitch something, and that something will include our tech, right? Whatever we're building. So we've written an article about this that we've published on our blog, and I'm going to put down in the chat. But just briefly, before launching the series, here are the 3 main tips that an investor from Northzone, in fact, Henrik, has given me to share with you engineers. And these 3 tips are the following. The first one is that the tech code review actually happens very late in the stage. Sometimes it doesn't even happen before the term sheets. So whether the code is clean or not matter not as much as what the result looks like, not from the code perspective, but from the app perspective. The second tip that he gave engineers is to focus on creating the experience. And what that means is that, again, as engineers, we try to make it perfect, we try to make it bug-free, but really when it comes to raising the investment fund, also because of the investment round, because of what we just said right now, it's important that we as engineers focus on actually creating something that the investor can feel. And the last one, which again follows back on these first 2, is if you have to make a choice, most likely in your choice focus on the front end, again because of the experience and because of where in the due diligence process the code review actually happens. So these 3 things I got in the chat from Henrik, and if you want to read more about it, again, I'll put in a second the link of the article in the chat. Other than that, I am really pleased to be here today, like I said, and I hope you guys enjoy. And that's really all for me, Pavel.
Yeah, great, Francesco. Thanks a lot for that overview. And yeah, I think one of the things that we're about at TechTree is helping engineers to not only find great jobs, but mostly connect with great engineers who are building interesting companies, get mentoring, connect with peers who are working in the same field, maybe solving the same problems related to different stacks or aspects of tech, like infrastructure or machine learning. So really hope that these occasions are a great opportunity to connect and get to know each other and get to know the companies better. And when it comes to this event, you can, as I said, reach out directly to the speakers. You can also see some more information about the companies in the expo area. Like all the companies are going to be sharing the stories of their growth and different technical challenges they're solving. So I'm not going to be talking about recruitment per se, but all of these companies are growing really fast and are looking to hire a lot of engineering roles. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce Manos Riglis. So thanks a lot, Francesco. You may leave the stage now. So Manos can join me.
Absolutely. I'm off now.
Hi, Manos. Are you with us? Is everything working?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen now.
Great.
So first of all, thank you for the introduction and the invitation. I just want to check that everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, all is good.
So hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So my name is Manos Riglis. I'm the VP of Engineering and Systems at Trustpilot. I've been at Trustpilot for just over a year, and I'm looking after our product engineering and our trust and transparency teams. And at Trustpilot, our mission is to be the universal symbol of trust with online reviews. We have over 100 million reviews right now on our platform, a number of businesses and consumers that are visiting our site and using our product. But with wanting to become a universal symbol of trust, one of the things we are working with, and this is one of sort of my functions, the transparency team, is dealing with fraud detection. But what do we mean around fraud detection in the context of a review platform? We're dealing with a lot of different areas, ranging from consumers. So that would be things like spam reviews or reviews that are fabricated and they're not adhering to our community guidelines. Businesses that, for example, might be inviting customers to leave reviews in a biased way. So they might be cherry picking for only the customers that have had a positive experience to leave a review, or they're incentivizing reviews. Or a few other ones, for example, where we had cases where a business would, for example, log in as a consumer and leave positive reviews on their own domain, or leave negative reviews on competitors' domains. And finally, the other part as well that we're looking at is kind of external factors to our platform. So things like review sellers. So you can go and, for example, try to buy reviews, and then there is people that will leave positive reviews on your behalf. And other things like, for example, our platform has been crawled in the past to get reviews out and then sell the content or create APIs on top of it. But for this specific talk, we're going to focus on one part of it, but to give you an indication, we have a number of fraud engines that are currently operating in our platform. And this is kind of a rough categorization. There is a bit of overlap, but effectively we have a number of fraud engines that are looking at content. So they're looking mainly at kind of spam reviews. We have a set of engines that look at fabrication, where a review is kind of not genuine, it's not for a genuine experience. We have engines that look at users, and engines that look at kind of the BUs or the business units. Now, those engines are a combination of both machine learning models and other engines that are more kind of rules-based, and they're looking at different thresholds. And they operate on a variety of data points. So anything from the review content, any metadata on the review, IP addresses of the users, and any behavioral data that we can use to create those models. Every single review that comes into Trustpilot is going through those fraud engines, and then there is a determination whether it is kind of it passes that validation or not. And in the cases where a review might be filtered, in some cases we reach out to the reviewer to say your review has been detected and it's been filtered, and we give the opportunity for users to challenge that decision. At the same time, we have both the businesses and the consumers on our platform being able to notify us of reviews for a number of different reasons. And our content integrity team will check those, and they will take an action, whether they need to filter a review or not. But the other advantage of that is we have a lot of labeled data of like past misbehavior that we can use to train our models and create new engines. But the one thing we're going to be talking about in this talk is around sort of spam. So there was an increase in spam on our platform over the last couple of years. And around Q1 to Q2 last year, we released a new spam model, which was very effective. But then what we started seeing is that the behavior of the spammers started changing. And we started seeing things like that. We started seeing sort of obfuscated contact numbers or email address using sort of Unicode. And there is, it is kind of a cat and mouse game. So with every rule we put in place, with every model we put in place, there is always that attempt to try to bypass it. So one of the things then we started thinking about towards sort of the middle of last year is how can we become better at reacting faster when we're detecting new patterns that are coming in. Obviously, one is to keep on retraining our models, but we want to think how can we can make those decisions faster, and how can we minimize the time that, let's say, a spam review stays on our platform. And that's when we started looking at event streaming. And this is a quote from the CTO, I think, of Smite, which is a company that was bought by Twitter, I believe, and they were looking at spam and fraud detection. And effectively, we're saying a lot of things around counting. Effectively, what you're trying to answer is how often, how many So in our case, it was very similar. How many reviews did we get from a specific IP? Is the content very similar? And we wanted to look at how can we become more real-time and react faster. So in terms of events, so we started looking at event streaming. So what is event streaming? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. There's a great article called Turning the Database Inside Out that I would recommend. But effectively, events that are published by a producing system, in our case, is a review coming in. They flow through a graph of different processors. The event can be enriched or features can be extracted. It gives you the advantage of doing like windowed statistics. And then it results in an output which basically can go into a data store or it can call out to APIs. And the patterns we started seeing that we wanted to use was things around like, feature extraction, like in real time, in a 5-minute window, how many reviews did we get from a specific IP? How can we enrich those then events? Then we start thinking more around sort of feature vectors. So a lot of our model training, as most of you that have been working with ML know, it's like data prep is kind of a big part of the model development, is how can we streamline that and create features in real time. And then the last one was more around sort of controlling that flow. So we've decided to start looking at Google Dataflow, which is a fully managed service. So the advantage for us, it was kind of serverless, fully managed with automated provisioning. It also gave us that opportunity for horizontal auto-scaling of all of the workload resources. And it's also part of the GCP data ecosystem where we're users of BigQuery. We've also been looking at some of the AI platform offerings from GCP. So it made sense to start looking into Dataflow as an event streaming platform. So how does it fit into our architecture? So in Trustpilot, we use both sort of AWS and Google Cloud. And Google Cloud is a lot more focused around some of our sort of more data tech. So effectively, as you can see on the screen, we're using SNS and SQS quite a lot at Trustpilot to trigger different events. So when a review event is created, we have a Lambda trigger, push that review and associated metadata into a Kinesis stream. It then goes into Dataflow. It goes through sort of a validation pipeline that I'm going to show you a bit more. And then that results in a call out to the review filtering API. If we make the determination, the review needs to be filtered. And also then all of the results go into BigQuery that allows us to do some additional analysis of how this is performing. So let's go into a couple of examples, and apologies for like a lot of code on the page, but the pipeline you see on the right-hand screen is one of our validation pipelines. So we start from the top where the source is coming in, so the reviews are coming in, we do some processing, and then at the same time, we're loading what we call the behavioral sort of configuration, which I'll show you in a bit more detail. We go through this validation process and then make a determination whether that review should be filtered or should be published. In the cases that we need to filter, we'll filter it, and then we make a request back to our sort of compliance APIs to take an action on the review. You will see here we also have this emit to Kinesis again. So in some cases where we cannot find any historical data, we might have kind of some race conditions. If we feel that there is not enough data there for some reviews, we just send it back to Kinesis and go through the process again. The code, as one of the engineers on the team told me, there is a lot of Java here. It's more of a DSL to try to construct this pipeline with code. And then the advantages here, we didn't have to worry about provisioning sort of workers or anything like that. All of that was handled for us. If we go into some more details on the steps in the pipeline, you can see on the right-hand screen some JSON documents. This is kind of one of our configurations around some of the checks we want to do. So we can specify here, for example, we want to look at the text of the review, and we want to look at the last 5 minutes as the event is streamed through. And we have this threshold of 3. So if we want to check if there's been duplicate text, so 3 reviews with the exact same text in 5 minutes, 3 of those, that rule will fail. Similar thing here where we're looking, let's say, from what IP address this review was created. If in the last 5 minutes there are 5 reviews from the same IP address, that will fail. And then it gives us the option to put some more configuration around domains that we want to whitelist, kind of our own IP addresses, and then you can see here there is a number of like integrations we have with third parties where we get less sort of spam reviews from those methods. Then if we go into the validation, effectively what we're doing here is we're composing the rules that I showed you before into what we call a trust policy. So effectively, we're looping through all of the available checks that we're doing, and then basically go, did it fail, did it pass, and then enrich that event. So as the review goes through, all of the numbers of checks are run, and basically we're getting that accumulation of statistics to go, it failed on this one, but it passed on that one. And then, as I said before, for example, here we can see, okay, we had X number of content failures, we have X number of behavioral failures, and then the rule we've put in place here as an example is if there is a minimum of 2 failures, then we want to apply that rule and filter the review. And you can see at the bottom is we're composing the string of what policy did we apply, what was the action we took, what was the description, and then it's passed then through into our compliance system. So to have a log of, yes, we filtered that review and we filter it for those reasons. So that gives us a bit more intelligence around what happened. And it also lets our content integrity agents know that if a review came down, this is the reason that, that the review was filtered. So where do we go from here? So as I said, it's still early days. We started this about 4 or 5 months ago, looking at event streaming. We want to start looking at more of how can we take some of our ML models and deploy them into this pipeline, so effectively have more of a real-time inference. More work on window statistics. Right now, for example, we might be looking at 5 minutes. We're experimenting, do we need to have more longer lasting windows or not? A real-time feature store. So as the reviews come in and they get enriched, we can start getting those features and created and then stored for the development of further models. And and the last one was more on anomaly detection. So it's a very common use case with event streaming, because as you're looking at the stream coming in, you can start sort of creating some view of what anomalous behaviors are taking place. And I'll pause here for any questions.
Hey, Manos, thanks for the great presentation. So Russell asked a question, how fuzzy is the matching? I'm assuming some scores are kind of more meaningful than others, so you wouldn't want to score all filters equally.
Yeah, that's correct. I think a lot of the work we do is when we look at kind of what thresholds to apply, we will look at a lot of our historical data as well, and then we will try to determine how to apply them to kind of minimize, in a way, the false positive ratio. And a lot of it is, in a way, it's kind of a risk assessment that you're making, that do you want to take more risk and perhaps have more false positives, or your thresholds are higher up. Content in our way, for example, duplicate content is a very strong signal. If someone leaves the same review within like the same minute, it's not kind of legitimate behavior. So yeah, so a lot of this depend on a use case basis.
Yeah, great. So what Russell is asking is, so this is supervised learning. You can actually see that on Stage tab on your right-hand side. One of the things I would suggest is that you can click on, once you finish the call, you can click on Russell's name, and you can then have a video conversation with him, or you can simply answer in the chat as well. And Sam had a question that is more technical. Could the code be made available on GitHub? But I understand that the video from the presentation will be accessible, so it's you're gonna be able to open it on the full screen rather than on a fairly limited one. So thanks a lot, Manos. That was I think super cool example of tech that you're building, and and a bit of that. There are more questions, but unfortunately, we have to move to another speaker. So warm round of applause, virtual applause from everyone. Like the audience is roaring, you can't hear it, but it is. And thanks a lot for your talk. And yeah, feel free to engage with the rest of the audience directly with them via video or in the chat.
I will do. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Manos.
Thanks.
This was great. Hi, Arseniy.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Bob.
Hey. So yeah, please let me introduce you to Arseniy, who's the CTO and co-founder of Personio, which is, I think, one of the most exciting stories in the European startup ecosystem. The story of an amazing growth in an area that seems to be boring, but Personio made an excellent product and an experience enormously amazing growth, raised at 1.7 million valuation earlier this year, and hiring like crazy, growing like crazy. And I think Arseniy is in a very unique position to tell the story of a startup, how it has grown from a couple of people to hundreds, and how it impacted the engineering organization. So over to you, Arseniy.
All right. Yeah, thanks a lot for the warm introduction, and happy to be talking here, guys. Thanks a lot for the awesome turnout, really. And yeah, without further ado, what I wanted to tell you guys is exactly what Pavel was talking about, is a story basically of how we scaled our product and engineering organization in 15 minutes. And firstly, what obviously makes sense to talk about is what Personio is about, right? So at Personio, we're building a scalable, powerful and adaptable HR platform for small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's companies from the size from around 10 to 1,000 employees. And this platform basically is encompassing the full employee lifecycle, which you see on the left side, right? So it's everything starting from recruitment functionality going into management, payment, and development, right? So overall, our mission is to improve business performance by driving excellence in people operations and strategy. And we have an ambition to really build a category-leading European startup, so European HR platform, right? And in a couple of years, we aim to have quite a lot of people on our platform, 1.5 million, and make them happy employees at their companies. So why do we need this large organization that I'm talking about, right? So overall, I think we have, as Pavel said, a pretty seemingly boring but a unique challenge, which is basically building an all-in-one HR system, right? So you see already on the circle, there's quite a lot of functionality that we covered, right? And basically, this all-in-one approach results in a pretty kind of complex and large product surface, right? So all of those individual pieces and circles that you see are can be reasoned about as separate products, right? And obviously that creates a very kind of complex and unique domain, which I think is full of awesome, like crown jewel engineering challenges that I'm also happy to be working together with the guys to resolve, right? And speaking about our journey, how did we fare in building this organization, right? So we started back in 2015 as a team of 4 founders. We had one pretty large pilot customer with whom we built out the initial product. And we started with a pretty large monolithic application, right, which I will touch in a second. And what we ended up building, so in 6 years, we grew to a 600 people organization, around 160 people product and engineering organization. There is currently around 3,000 customers, so companies which use our product on the daily basis. We scaled from 1 small team in Munich to 3 like engineering locations, 3 major hubs. And with all the scale, we also obviously needed to grow out of the monolithic system and build out like a truly distributed system, right? So obviously the principles that worked back in 2015 don't work in 2021, and there's a couple of guiding things that kind of let us scale the org to the size for which we're in now, right? And I think the most kind of important guiding principle for us, especially in product engineering teams, is building based on the notion of autonomous and mission-based teams, right? Which are kind of fully empowered to really own the domain in which they operate, right? And those mission-based teams, they are organized around this product, around the product verticals of the employee lifecycle that you've seen in the previous slides, right? So what did we end up with as an organization, right? Which I think would be interesting for some of you if you're planning also to join. right? So pretty fairly on, we started with two larger domains, which was HRM and recruiting, right? And then fairly quickly, we wanted to kind of close in the circle, right? Basically adding product teams according to the needs of the business that were arising, right? At a certain point, also the mission of some teams, right? So here, for instance, recruiting, HR management, payroll, it grew out from the scope of one team, and then we ended up having kind of this teams of teams, so to say, right? So this clusters of tribes. If you're familiar with Spotify model, for instance, right? This is something that they have also experienced in the past, right? So then also fairly early on, we started to invest into our technology platform, which started with our infrastructure engineering teams or SRE teams, and fairly quickly basically growing also specialization, adding also developer experience team, which work on our internal development platform, making sure also that the teams which are responsible for security engineering, quality assurance engineering are also being stood up. Another interesting development that we have experienced over the course of the last years is that despite this mission-driven teams and organization overall being very effective at producing great quality software products, the cross-cutting concerns sometimes that needed to be met across cutting projects are became harder and harder to own and manage, right? And so that resulted into us investing into a set of product platform teams or product platform tribes, which at the moment comprise several, and they're responsible for managing these cross-cutting concerns, right? So identity and access management, things like access rights, exposing them both to the users, but also to our product teams to make sure that they make use of great security primitives within their products, right? Tasks and workflows, since every team needs to manage HR workflows, right? We needed to invest into a team like that. Reporting analytics, where all of the data from all of these domains is kind of flowing in, and where we're able to kind of denormalize it and build out reports in data structures which are actually much more queryable. And also, what's interesting, we invested into platform UI team, which is managing our design and component system, which also, again, all the other teams are using in their on the day-to-day basis. Right, so that's the kind of work basically which we resulted in, and we're aiming to also grow it even further. Now speaking about technology, as I already mentioned, back in 2015, we started with Monolith, which was not as beautiful and shiny as this Utah slab, basically, but it was, I think as Francesca said also in the beginning, right, it was the right choice back then for us, because this is what enabled us to move extremely fast also, right? And since the domain for the four of us, none of us was an HR expert, was rather new and complex, that enabled us to fairly quickly kind of master it and fairly quickly also onboard the new engineers which are coming, because one of the main advantages of having a monolithic system in the beginning, right, is the speed with which you can actually transfer knowledge and onboard new people in, right? However, not surprisingly, the scalability from the both engineering perspective and also from purely kind of non-functional perspective also started to slow down significantly throughout the course of the years since we've been developing Personio. And particular pain points that we have experienced, obviously, with this architecture is things like deployment speed, right? So you cannot really kind of deploy and as parallelly as possible as you can do in microservice architecture, for instance, and so on, right? And also, in addition to this, we needed to re-platform, basically. The monolith was initially written in PHP, and we wanted to select something that actually scales much better and adapts much better to the organizational size that we wanted to actually get to in order to, create the speed and agility which we actually wanted to, right? So basically, we wanted to re-platform into a distributed system. And for this, we started to work kind of on this target architecture, right? And we wanted to preserve some of the principles, which is structuring our domain and our code base based on those product verticals that you have seen on the previous slides, right? However, besides kind of the functional separation of the product verticals, there's obviously some commonalities which we have, which is the clients that our customers use primarily, the primary one being the web client, right? We also have a small mobile application, and we're continuing to invest more and more into the APIs, right? And those clients basically talk with the set of the backend services over an API gateway, right, of a set of the application services. As I already mentioned, all of them are kind of structured around these product verticals that you guys have seen in the previous slides, right? And in the web system, we have the component system, which kind of powers basically the whole web application and creates a consistent user experience across all of those product verticals. Our infrastructure, in the beginning, we started with the non-managed infrastructure over the years. In 2018, we migrated to AWS, and the infrastructure engineering teams and the technology platform teams are kind of managing this cross-cutting components which are, indent present kind of on all of the services such as logging, data storage, and so on. And also on the product platform side of things, right, there's also kind of the backend platform components that need to be managed, such as components focused around authentication, authorization, notifications, and so on, right? There's the certain core data concerns that need to be also managed centrally. As you can imagine, for instance, in the HR domain, notions such as employment and company are overall present and need to be queried by almost all of the verticals. So that also need to be kind of put in a central, processed in a central manner, right? And in addition, also there is a workflow engine and reporting engine which power like both the cross-cutting workflows and making sure that those are managed kind of in a reliable way. A reporting engine, which I already mentioned also in the past, which is responsible in the end for producing high-quality reports for all the stakeholders in the customer companies that we have. So now, like shortly touching also on which kind of technologies do we actually use right now in order to get to this architecture, right? So web and mobile, we build them using the React. So on mobile, obviously it's React Native, right? So we use TypeScript in order to kind of write out our workflows there, and Redux to manage the data flows. On the web, we also selected, due to this replication kind of move, we selected the micro frontend pattern in order to migrate the monolithic structure that we had before into something that scales better, right? On the microservice side, we decided for the platform of using Kotlin and Spring Boot for the majority of our workflows. We have a kind of a sprinkle of Go for the services which are not necessarily at the core of the domain, right? Also, all of the microservices we package basically in Docker containers. Recently, also we started to invest into gRPC, which will be kind of taking over as the main communication protocol between the services. And the services kind of mostly manage the data using RDS. So we use Postgres at the moment and the S3 in order to store the data. Now, obviously, the synchronous communication that gRPC offers also is enriched with the message bus. So we use basically currently a pops-up pattern with an SNS SQS, and all of that is built on top of obviously AWS, right? So we automate the whole infrastructure with Terraform. Both of our infrastructure workflows and also the application workflows we deploy via GitLab, and Risk Kubernetes kind of as our main platform or container orchestration platform on which we run all our workflows. So last but not least, I also want to talk a little bit about the future plans. So as you have seen also from the organizational structure, there's overall a lot of things that we are aiming to do, right? So building this HR platform and being a European category leader. And I think one of the ones that we are very also excited about, and I think it's also an awesome opportunity from engineering perspective, is building a truly integrated platform. So there's a big also business opportunity behind this. As you can imagine, we are kind of as a platform also, we are in a condition to kind of connect a lot of different business tools and really kind of manage them also centrally, right? So as you can imagine, even connecting with Slack, right, and requesting your absences over Slack, for instance, right, is one of the examples here. And overall, kind of building this ecosystem of integrated tools is something that we are overall excited about. So based on this and other opportunities also, which you've seen also previously, we've raised recently a 125 million Series D round, which kind of brought us into this freshly baked unicorn club, which I think is not a purpose by itself, but I think it just shows kind of how much of a great opportunity we have in order to really build out this exciting platform. And also we're investing this money in order to build actually the further build out the product and further build out the engineering teams. So last year also 2x approximately, despite the corona times. This year we're also planning to 2x our product and engineering work, and we are looking for engineers of all kinds of specialties and focal points to join us, right? If you're excited to build this UX experiences for the users, right, joining the product vertical tribes. If you're excited about architecture, you can join our product platforms tribe and build out kind of the scalable components. You can also join our technology platform tribe, so to really build out the developer experience platform, to build out the kind of the great infrastructure automation primitives that power the whole org. And yeah, there is a lot of exciting things. So yeah, please join us on our journey, right? So excited to talk to you guys. If you ask any questions, I don't have any more time probably left anymore, but yeah, thanks everyone for your attention, and feel free to reach out to me on Open. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Arseniy. I think it's only fair to say that Personio is growing as fast as you speak. So I think you're reaching the sound barrier with that. But
I hope that
I must say, it was pretty cool to listen to that, and obviously, I'm sure you could speak a bit longer. We have a couple of questions. Bishwa is asking, as the team grows and with different tech stack, how is the experience to keep engineering standards same across the tribe's teams? Which I think is something that is a challenge for a lot of companies.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's also a challenge for us. So we use several kind of ways to keep the stack consistent, right? So we use backend microarchitecture guilds, frontend microarchitecture guilds, and also the DevOps guilds in order to kind of cross-cut across different teams and create this alignment. Also, there is a pretty advanced RFC, or request for comments process, right? Which basically where every engineer can kind of propose various changes and also get buy-in and comments from the whole org. And there is also additional kind of committees and entities that we're rolling out, which are there to kind of, not to kind of say no, but basically empower and to create the standards across the teams.
Yeah, great. There's also one more question from Francesco, but we're not going to have time for that just now because we need to make the space for another speaker. But if you could click the stage tab, Francesco asked a question about tech stack, and if you would make the same decisions again, so we'll respond to him on chat or via video. So thanks a lot, Arseniy. That was really exciting.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, Nils. Do you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hey, well, so yes, Nils, great to have you here. Nils is a principal engineer at Klarna, and he's going to be talking about building runtime platform for developers. And if you thought that, Personio might be the fresh part of Unicorn Club, but if I'm not mistaken, Klarna is part of a very small decacorn club. So it's going to be very interesting to listen to your story and how you solve your technical challenges as you're one of the biggest fintech companies ever created in the world. So over to you, Nils.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a very interesting company. I really love working there, and I'm just going to share my screen. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about building runtime platforms for developers. But first, hi, my name is Nils, and I'm a principal engineer at Klarna. And we make shopping smooth at Klarna, and we aim to become the world's favorite way to shop. And Klarna Engineering is the ones that craft the product, and today we are over 1,000 engineers split up over 200 teams within Klarna. And I work in a part in Klarna that is called Developer Service. And our mission is to empower developers to deliver high quality and secure services with minimal effort. And what this means is that we build tooling, services, and platforms for developers inside of Klarna to be able to develop and operate services with ease. And the foundation for this in Klarna is something called the Klarna Engineering Platform. And this is built up by 19 larger products and many smaller ones, spanning from build and testing and deployment, but also in areas like networking, authentication, A/B testing frameworks, and even UI components. And right now we are about 15 teams working with this domain, and we have about 100 engineers. And tonight I'm going to talk about runtime platforms, especially for container-based services. And to just get a brief overview how this works is the user will provide an artifact and this something called the service metadata to us. And they use this to prepare the deployment. And this bundles the artifact and configuration into one version unit. And this also gets mirrored out to all the regions that are defined for the service. And when the user actually do a deployment in the system, what it basically does is apply this version bundle to the specific environment that the developer chooses to do it. And then, of course, there are many other things you can do within the platform as well. For instance, you can use experimentation platform, which is an A/B testing tool. But what is right for a small project might not be the right approach when the number of engineers starts to grow. And when the number of teams are really starting to grow, a lot of things starts to change. And this growth will also make good ideas from yesterday not to scale anymore. But even when you are in a situation like this, it's really important to start small and learn fast, but also have a good understanding of what you want to build and achieve, because the clearer the goal you will have, the easier it will be to evaluate. And one thing that I see is quite often overlooked is that the fastest learning you can do is actually in the design phase, and then iterate on your ideas and learn from them and keep on iterating. And for me, this journey started with CloudFormation, and it enabled us to build infrastructure fairly quickly. And it also made it easy to do reproducible infrastructure. And we could trace who made changes, and we also had infrastructure as code. But still, you had to know a lot of details, and code reuse was difficult. So what we did then was we introduced Troposphere. This is a Python library to generate CloudFormation. And this started we could increase the code reuse enormously, and the static typing helped us a lot. But we kept on iterating on this, and we introduced Docker into the mix to give us better flexibility on the deployments. But this also helps developers to build and test their software, of course. But we kept on iterating on this to get better code reuse, and we started to build high-level components, also adding build validations, automatic tagging, rudimentary compliance controls, and stuff like this. And a lot of these things you might find today in the CDK, but we even had more high-level components than that. And by iterating and paying attention to what you learned from the past, you can move more quickly. But when you start to scale things up to over 1,000 engineers, things starts to become really interesting, and people's expectations change as well. And they kind of expect you to have organization-wide answers to how to work, for instance, and investing in making things simpler for developers starts to really pay off. But things also becomes harder. For instance, in our platform, communication with our users is a vital part, and security becomes so much more important. But a runtime platform is so much more than container management as well. Of course, the solid core is important, but it's the integrations around the service that truly brings value to the user of the system. And to deliver on this, our platform stands on 3 pillars. The first is the core runtime platform. And this is all about quality of the deployments and the availability and the performance of the services running within the platform. The second part is the integration platform. And here we want to enable contributors to integrate their products into our platform, ranging from the basics of logging and metrics to A/B testing clients or edge protection and other things. And the last thing is the rapid development pillar. And here we are working how we can deliver secure, fast, and easy development for our users, and how they can do operations easily. And a lot of things there is around best practices, governance, and control, but it's also the UX of the user. And at the heart of this, we have the service interface that describes how service must interact with the platform. And this ranges from how it should be configured, how the service should boot and shut down, and how to do a health check, or how the traffic should flow. And this allows us to change the platform without having to risk the interaction with the services running within it. And if we look a little bit closer, how we build this up is that to the left you have the control plane, which controls everything, and it has an API. And underneath this, we have the control plane logic that we can run in multiple versions. And this is mainly built up with step functions and lambdas, actually. And this allows us to do, for instance, test runs of a new versions in the system before we switch over to that new version. So at that point, we can have deployments running in both versions at the same time. And then it has a layer of common control plane infrastructure. And then in other AWS accounts, we have our platforms where the services actually are running. And to be able to communicate with the control plane, it has a small common infrastructure that we provision out to that one. And then the control plane can provision for ECS clusters and the service infrastructure that is needed. But container management is kind of starting to become a commodity, but security at scale is not, at least not yet. And we spend a lot of time there. And the key for us is to be able to balance control and enablement. And especially in a banking environment, this becomes much more important. And for us, what we are seeing, the most important feature we have is to be able to roll out new improved ways of working. And many times our most valued features are connected to things like security and compliance, auditing and governance. And be able to introduce these auxiliary products around the services, this is what we can utilize to drive change within the company. And for us, our motto is that it should be easy to do the right thing. Thank you very much. And I hope we have some questions as well from the audience.
Yeah, I think we only have a comment from Omar, that it's fantastic approach. Blue-green is great in terms of velocity. I personally prefer radical, incremental, immutable, ephemeral rainbow style infra. Good luck.
The approach with the deployments there in our platform is really great. And it's also great that we can provide really nice blue-green deployments to our users running within the platform as well.
Yeah, so I think thanks a lot, Nils. Really great talk, and I love the kind of ecosystem for engineers that you create, because I think it's also something that I believe in a lot of big companies starts to be the obstacle and something that's slowing people down. And I think the team that you're part of is something that just continues to make it a great environment for engineers to work, right?
Yes, and also I really enjoy developing for developers as well, because you are so close to your users and you have very good and direct feedback as well.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing mentality. So thanks a lot for that presentation.
Thank you.
And we're gonna move on to the next speaker. Great. Hi, Matthew.
Hi.
So check if your presentation's working, and while you do that, I'll just give a short overview. So so Matthew is part of the engineering team at Infogrid. Infogrid is a unicorn in the making. Recently raised its Series A of 15 million, led by Northzone. So yeah, Matt is going to be talking about the challenges of company at an earlier stage and sharing a bit of what he's working on. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. So yeah, this is my talk on Infogrid's road to 1 million sensors and how our architecture's kind of progressing to get us to that goal. Okay, so firstly, just a bit about myself. So my name's Matthew Walsh. I live in Edinburgh, up in Scotland. I studied geography at university, and then I worked in computer mapping for a number of years. So I kind of moved sideways into software engineering, as I found I was basically writing code all day and enjoying that more than I was the maps. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 7 years. And I joined Infogrid in September 2020. So not too long ago, and I was developer number 7. So we've grown significantly since then. Okay, so what is Infogrid? So Infogrid retrofit these third-party sensors into buildings and assets. So then these sensors generate events, which our system or platform consumes. And then we provide a layer of intelligence on top of that raw data that enables smart decision making for the people that look after these buildings and assets. So the simplest example of this would be a temperature sensor. So you could install tiny temperature sensors in say a fridge. Maybe you've got medical supplies that need to be kept at a certain temperature, or food. And then our system can basically create an average of the entire fridge and set up alerts that would ensure that the building manager is notified if the fridge gets too hot or cold for whatever you're storing. Okay, so these are some of the sensors that we use. So we don't actually produce the sensors ourselves, the hardware. We use third-party vendors. I'll just show you one here. So that's from Disruptive Technologies. That's a proximity sensor. So you can see it's pretty small and unobtrusive. So these sensors have 15-year battery life, and that's if they transmit an event every 15 minutes. You can increase the frequency, so you could bring it down to say 5 minutes, but that's obviously going to have an effect on the battery life that you get out of the sensor. Okay, so how do the sensors work? Basically, they transmit using encrypted radio transmission. So the sensor transmits every 15 minutes to this, which is, you can't see it too well there, but that's the cloud connector. So once this has the event, it's connected with either 3G, 4G, or just Ethernet in the bottom there. And that transmits the events off to the vendor's system. And then we ingest those events from the vendor via a webhook. Okay, so just a few of the use cases that our platform can be used for. So people counting, obviously we've got the pandemic going on at the moment. So if you know the footfall or the room occupancy of a particular room, that can be really useful to stop kind of overcrowding, and just knowing that you've not got too many people in a particular area of a building. Desk occupancy is another one. So I think probably after the pandemic, we'll see that not everybody goes back to work in the same way. Maybe people will work from home, a bit more of a mixture of home and office. So knowing kind of how desks are utilized is going to enable kind of more dynamic management of them. So the way that works is if we take a temperature sensor, we've got take the readings from that, and we've trained an algorithm with TensorFlow that basically allows us to detect if somebody's sitting at the desk or not. So that's what I mean by a virtual sensor. And then finally, pipe monitoring. So if you've got commercial buildings anywhere with water pipes, these pipes need to be flushed pretty regularly to ensure that the water doesn't sit and stagnate. because that's kind of perfect conditions for something nasty like Legionella bacteria to form in. So yeah, just using a combination of temperature sensor and a water movement sensor, we're able to check that that those pipes are being flushed in accordance with the regulations. Okay, so this was our kind of initial architecture. So start on the left here. So like I said earlier, the sensor vendors push their raw events to our ingestion service, which is just a basic Python REST API. We take these events, put them into our own internal event format, and store them in DynamoDB. And then we've got a web app stack. So we use Django REST framework with Postgres, and then React for the front end. And then any event data we need, we can just retrieve from Dynamo. So you can see there I've included a bit of JSON for like a raw event format. So kind of thinking for going with Dynamo initially was it's obviously really scalable, being NoSQL, and because it's AWS, it's high availability, so kind of don't have to worry about the headache of managing it yourself. AWS takes care of all of that for you. But the cons were it's kind of not so cost effective when you start getting the amount of data that we're putting into it. But the main one really was the ability to query the data. So obviously all this data we're gathering is our kind of biggest asset, and to not be able to query it in a kind of efficient way, and get the information out of it that we need, it's not ideal. So looking forward to where we're going, where we plan on going. So we've got a target for our system to support 1 million sensors by the end of the year. So 1 million sensors equates to 251 million events per day. So yeah, that's a lot of events. And then on top of that, if you've configured any alerts for sensors, so like I was saying earlier, you could send a text message or an email if a sensor reaches a certain threshold for a certain length of time. That in turn produces more events. And then the virtual sensors that I talked about earlier, they also produce events themselves. So yeah, you can see that maybe by this point, Dynamo maybe isn't the best solution for us. Okay, so we came up with the concept of creating a data lake, which you're probably familiar with. So the only thing that's changed, you can see here, is instead of pushing the data into Dynamo from our ingestion service, we push it into Timescale DB and into AWS. So for Timescale, that's really good because it's meant for time series data. So it's based on top of Postgres, but handles time series data really well, really fast for querying, and lets us query in SQL, which is much better. But it's not cost effective to store everything in there with the amount of events that we've got to store. So we keep events in there for up to 3 months, and then past that, we store those events in JSON format in S3 buckets. So we use S3 and S3 Glacier. S3 Glacier is obviously slower. It's meant for kind of archiving your data. So it's slower to retrieve the data, but that doesn't really matter for a lot of the use cases of the older data. It tends to be like yearly reporting or some kind of aggregation that you're doing over time. So it's not kind of time critical queries. And then we use AWS Glue. So what that does is creates a data catalog for us. So we kind of partition this data on S3 by sensor and by year. And then we use AWS Athena on top of that to query the data. So this is really good because it lets us query in SQL, which yeah, obviously is just much better than Dynamo's kind of querying capabilities. So as a kind of overview, that what the data lake gives us is a better sliding scale of controlling the cost. So that's going to see us, I think, much better going forward. Obviously, this is just kind of what one aspect of our architecture I've looked at here. So we've got loads of other challenges coming up to kind of scale the other different parts of our system. But just to give you a kind of flavor of what's coming up next for us. So we're looking at creating a healthy building dashboard. So you can see there in the picture that will have like floor plans with heat maps in it. So you can, see averages across a whole floor, and just get a holistic view of what's going on in a particular building. So that's really good for environmental, social governance. We've also got new sensors coming on board, so vibration sensor, lighting sensor, and then sensors that will log more frequently, but still send the events at the same kind of 15-minute time period. But it gives us that more granular data for us to analyze. And yeah, so I'm sure there'll be lots of exciting new ideas we come up with to use these new sensors and add value. Yeah, so I think that's my talk. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Matthew. Magdi had a question. What are we planning to use for the dashboard? Any particular AWS tech stack or bespoke?
For the dashboard, I'm not actually too sure yet. I think it's to be decided, but we tend to stick with, our decision making tends to be that AWS tends to be the easiest way to do something, then we would use AWS. But then further down the line, as we found out with this, it's maybe not always the cheapest option. So not too sure we'll use that yet on that one though.
Yeah, and Omar earlier, and you can see this question on the stage tab as well, had a comment that if you go serverless with Python Lambda, you can do it all in a map, reduce fashion on top of S3 and Lambda as compute layer, most neat, lean, and cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lambda is something we do use. It's certainly, I guess the disadvantage of that is that you kind of tie yourself to the serverless way of doing things, which could be a risk going forward, I guess.
And there's also a question from Russell. Are all the real-world applications building facilities management, or have you looked at stuff like agriculture?
So at the moment, I think it's more facilities management and asset management, but I think certainly in the future, if there was enough demand for something like agriculture, that would, certainly be something we'd look at.
Yeah, and Ilias has a question: Do data like temperature, etc., come from the right sources?
So if I understand correctly, I think yes, in that we can have multiple sensors. So yeah, sometimes, like I said, with the Legionnaire's pipe monitoring, that's taking data from like a temperature sensor and a water movement sensor, and it combines them together. And yeah, we can take like averages, so we can group sensors together. Like I said earlier, in a fridge or something, if you've got maybe 15 sensors in a huge walk-in fridge. So that's the kind of data sources we use.
Yeah, great. Okay, I think that's it. And Lubna, yes, the recordings of the session are going to be available. So thanks everyone. Really enjoyed all the talks. Thanks a lot, Matthew. And like we've said, I hope that was a lot of insights into what exactly are these companies doing, what they're building, and how. And if you want to further talk about either their technology decisions or the things they're working on, you can reach out directly to the speakers. And if you want to apply, see the jobs that are open, the roles that they're hiring, you can reach out via TechTree. You can have a look at all the open jobs and the profile. And thanks to all the guests and everyone asking questions. I hope that despite some time limits, we were able to respond properly. And in 2 weeks' time, we can meet again as we're hosting another Show the Code event. This time with Albion Ventures portfolio. So looking forward to see it. Thanks a lot.